Billie Eilish just released her brand new album, Hit Me Hard and Soft, and every time I listen to a new Billie Eilish album, I find so many cool vocal production tricks that her and her brother Phineas include on the album that I think really go a long way for adding a little bit of sauce for the listener. So in this video, I want to tackle 5 of my favorite creative vocal effects that I heard throughout this album, and I want to show you how to recreate those from scratch. These are really simple effects, but when you use them well, they can add so much dynamic, so much sauce, and so much interest to a vocal arrangement or a production in general. So we're going to dive in. I'm going to look at a vocal effect from Birds of a Feather. We're going to look at a vocal effect from Chihiro. We're going to look at 2 effects from L'amour de ma vie, and we're going to look at 1 effect from the song Blue. So we're going to tackle all of that right now. But before we do, my name's Austin. You're watching Make Pop Music. If you like this video, make sure that you subscribe because we do videos like this every single Friday. We have not missed a Friday in like almost 2 years. So go ahead and subscribe if you want tons of content like this. And if you want any more content, go check out our website, makepopmusic.com. We have sample packs, preset packs, MIDI packs, courses, tons of free downloads for you. So there will be a link to that in the description. But let's dive in and let's take a look at these Billie Eilish vocal effects. So to start, before we get into any of the effects, I want to show you how to mix a kind of general Billie Eilish style vocal. She records very soft, very close to the mic, and it's a nice kind of warm, rounded vocal mix. It's very different than what we normally do on the channel that's super bright, super punchy. So let's go ahead and let's just listen. This is the raw vocal that I tracked. It's a Lauten Audio Eden on the neutral setting going into a Rupert Neve Designs Newton with a little bit of Blue Silk engaged and a little bit of EQ engaged. And then that's going into an AudioScape 1176 Revision D, and that's going into an AudioScape Opto compressor, and then that is going into my RME interface just as a line input. And this is what that sounds like.
Stuck in place, but I thought we were making pace, but we're not. No.
So to get that Billie Eilish style vocal, what I wanted to do is just kind of filter out some of the rumble, filter out a little bit of those kind of boxy mids, and then just darken this vocal up by scooping some of the sibilants out. Sounds like this.
Stuck in place, but I thought we were making pace, but we're not.
Still keeps it warm, still keeps it round, but it doesn't make it so boxy. The next thing is using like a Pultec style EQ just to kind of attenuate some of those mids a little bit more and boost some of the high end that's super high while attenuating some of that kind of harsh high mid.
Stuck in place, but I thought we were making pace, but we're not. No.
Then we're just going to do a little bit of de-esser, nothing wild on this.
Stuck in place, but I thought.
And then a little bit of RVox. She doesn't compress her vocals a ton. And since we're going through 2 outboard compressors, I'm just doing a little bit with RVox.
Stuck in place, but I thought we were making pace, but we're not. No, we're.
And then the next thing is 1 more Pro Q, just kind of doing what we did earlier at like 300 hertz and again at 3K.
Stuck in place, but I thought we were making pace, but we're not.
And then just a little bit of tuning. I have this as a super slow retune speed at like 55. And then we have 2 sends. We have a long reverb that is just this Valhalla Vintage Verb right here. It's a 1.85 second haul. Here are all of the settings. And then it is just the Abbey Road technique filtering out the highs and lows. And then the most important thing for the Birds of a Feather sound is this really prominent 8th note delay that is just like a pretty high feedback. I'm using the analog chorus. And then other than that, I'm just doing a little bit of high cut and low cut in here and a little bit of EQ. And once I engage those effects, now we have something that sounds like this.
Stuck in place, but I thought we were making pace, but we're not.
And that kind of gives you that Birds of a Feather sound.
Stuck in place, but I thought we were making pace, but we're not.
And that's kind of the general vocal mix that we'll be using throughout this video. So now let's actually go to the first creative effect that I want to show you. And that is this cool little granular delay that they have in the song Chihiro. I want to say it's like 16 seconds in the song, and it specifically happens on the word strange. So let me show you what this sounds like. This is just my dry vocal with my vocal chain.
It was all fake.
And then what you want to do is there's a ton of different plugins that you could use to kind of recreate this. What we're trying to do is add a little bit of like granular synthesis, granular retiming. So what you could do is you always could like just take this, stretch it out like ×4, print that, stretch it back, and it might have some of those artifacts in there. The time stretching in Cubase is almost too transparent to where it didn't do exactly what I wanted to do. But if you're in something like Ableton, I think that that's probably what this was done in. You can always do it like that. You can use something like Portal, which is a granular kind of synthesis, granular control. But what I specifically used for this example was a plugin called Infiltrator. It's basically just this multi-effects tool, kind of similar to like the Shaper Box and stuff like that. And I just found this preset 25% and then just changed a couple of the speed settings. So this is like 1/32. And then I have the grain rate at like 43 hertz, tempo at 1/4. This is what everything's looking like. Resolution is at 34%, stretch is at 25%. And what I'm doing is automating this mix up. So if we have this, you know, not automated and it's just 100% wet. However, I don't want it to be like that the whole time. So what I'm going to do is just automate it up for the word all. So you can see right here, we have a little automation lane. Let me close this. And now, as this goes, you'll see this automation drip up.
It was all fake.
And you can kind of just use that on any element. So that's kind of similar to what she's using in the song Strange. Here's what it sounds like in the context of the mix.
You'd always break. It was all fake.
And you can get as nitty gritty as you want with automating it. You can have it slower, you can have it faster. Again, you could use something like Portal. You could literally just use something like granular retiming inside of your DAW. There's a million ways to do it, but essentially you're trying to stretch the audio and then compress it back together. So it has those artifacts of being stretched, which gives it that granular kind of breaking apart texture that you hear in the example of Chihiro. So let's move on to the second effect that I want to talk about, and that is this really cool kind of gated throw that you hear in Birds of a Feather. So I'll show you what I'm talking about right here. It happens.
It was all fake.
You're going to hear that in the second verse, I think on the word shit specifically. So all we need to do for this, I've turned off all of my sends. Here is our dry vocal with that vocal chain that I showed you earlier in the video.
Fake.
We're just copying the word fake on its own little track down here.
Fake.
So what we want to do is add a really, really massive reverb. I'm going to use vintage reverb, but you could kind of use any big reverb, any kind of hall or plate or chamber or cavern is all going to work. I just know so many people have this. And these are the kind of effects that I have. So I have it at about 8 seconds. I don't really have a pre-delay. I could probably actually cut a little bit of this low end out and do that. And yeah, that's going to be good. Here's what it sounds like. You want something that is 100% wet, super long, because once that's layered over that kind of normal vocal,
it was all fake.
And that's actually kind of a similar throw that I've heard used throughout the album as well for those big, long, spacey kind of reverb throws. However, if you want that super specific effect that you hear in Birds of a Feather, I'm going to use Transcape, but you could use Shaper Box, you could use LFO Tool, you could use the effects modulator in Cubase. Really anything that can do a time-based volume duck is going to work perfect. But I'm using Transcape. It's just by Kilohertz. It's in the Slate subscription if you have their all access pass. And I have the attack kind of slow. I don't want this super trancy. Here's what it sounds like if it's fast. It's cool, but I don't want that click. I kind of want it more of like a swell. So I have that right around 70 milliseconds. Decay 55, sustain 50%, release. And then I just have this mix about 88, 90%. And what that does is that gives me this really cool big throw, but it'll add that kind of choppy movement in. You could also just do this with like Tremolator or any kind of stock tremolo tool, really any tool that's going to duck audio in and out. But the key is that you make this its own vocal track. You add a massive reverb on the word or on the phrase that you want, and then you add the Transcape after the reverb so it can duck that kind of super wet, super wide, spacey sound. All right, let's move on to our next example, and this is just off of L'amour de ma vie. This is the kind of transition vocal that happens between the normal part of the song and the kind of Breathe Carolina-esque dance part of the song. So it sounds like this.
I thought that we had come about 100 miles.
So let me show you what it sounds like just with our normal vocal chain on it.
I thought that we had come about 100 miles.
So the real key to this is actually going in and chopping or gating some of the words and phrases out. So it almost sounds like it's kind of like losing signal or dipping out. It's something that happens in the real song. If you don't want that, you could obviously just have this as a long sustained vocal, but that happened in the song. So I figured I would just kind of show you. This was all one vocal that I just went and used my cut tool and just kind of chopped different silent parts out really, really aggressively. So the first thing that we want to do to get that sound is an Autotune. We're speeding up our retune speed a little bit. And we're also going to use this Formant control. It might also be called throat length in whatever tuning software that you're using. But essentially, we just want to bring this down. I have it at 83.
I thought that we had come about 100 miles.
It gives it that almost alien kind of like robot effect.
I thought that we had come about.
That's normal.
I thought that we had come about.
So that's what you want to do to get that kind of formanted texture. The next thing that we're doing is adding decapitator because I want to add a lot of saturation. And for this, I have the drive almost at 9. I have the low cut right around here at like 10 o'clock. I have the tone right around here at like 10, between 10 and 11. And then I have the high cut all the way up. I have the output at like 11 o'clock. And then I have the mix at like 2 o'clock.
I thought that we had come about 100 miles.
It's just giving it that broken speaker effect. The next thing that we're doing is, this is probably the most important, is the doubler. So I've just put this on the basic doubler setting and then made sure that there's no direct signal, and I'm using 1 and 3. So it's panning 1 to the left, panning 1 to the right, and it's just kind of separating them by adding a little bit of a delay offset and a little bit of a detune offset.
I thought that we had come about 100 miles.
And that's how you get that really wide vocal with only one vocal. Let's add a little bit of tremolo. This is just a stock effect in Cubase. I'm just adding this at 10 hertz at like 40%.
I thought that we had come about 100 miles.
It gives it that little flutter that you might want. We add a little tiny bit of bit crusher or like a bit reduction.
I thought that we had come about 100 miles.
And then last, we're going to add Pro Q just to clean this up. So I'm doing a really sharp bandpass at 72 dB per octave, 165 for the low end, about 5,500 for the top end, and then just doing some reshaping with these really wide bell curves.
I thought that we had come about 100 miles.
And then listening in the context of the mix, it sounds a little bit like this.
All fake.
I thought that we had come about 100
It was
miles.
all fake.
So this is not one of the effects that's going to count, but just a little bonus is in L'Amour, there's also like this reverb that starts swelling up under it. So to do that, we're actually going to keep the Autotune decapitator and tremolo at the exact same thing, but we're going to take off the doubler and we're going to take off the bit crusher, and we're going to do some band passing a little bit higher up. So this is about 400 and about 7,500, and then we're going to add this Echo Boy at 1/16 with the Echoplex, and you want to make sure that this is not very wide at all. So we're pulling the width all the way down, and we're adding a really short, really kind of slappy reverb at 50%. And then I'm just using S1 to pull it in just a little bit to narrow this up. So that layered over this. So that's something that happens in the second half of that vocal effect in L'Amour de Ma Vie. Sounds like this. So if you want to redo that, that's all that you have to do for that. Let's go to our big L'Amour de Ma Vie vocal, which is that like really auto-tune, Breathe Carolina-esque kind of dance pop number that they have. So the first thing that we're doing is, actually, before any of that, we're compressing this one a lot harder. So we were at like -7 on this RVox. I'm pulling this down to like almost -16. I want this thing cooked.
You didn't want this.
And then, of course, the next thing is we are tuning this with a 0 retune speed. We can obviously bring flex tune down as well. And even inside of my graph editing with Very Audio, I am tuning this hard. And it's going to give you that really robotic, really jumpy effect. And then what we're doing is similar to one of the other effects. We're adding decapitator, drive at 10, low cut at like 2 o'clock, tone at like 10 o'clock, high cut almost at noon, output at 10 o'clock, and the mix at 3 o'clock.
You didn't want this.
Just gives you that really
And I didn't need it.
broken crush sound. And then the next thing is just doing a little bit of EQ to clean this up. We're going to get rid of all of that kind of low end distortion. We're going to clean up the mids just a bit.
You didn't want this.
So that's how to get that tuning, but you can tell that it doesn't sound quite right yet.
You didn't want this. And I didn't need it.
We're going to add that reverb that we had earlier, that kind of long, kind of 1.5, 2 second hole. But the main thing that we're adding is this L'Amour delay down here. So let me show you what I'm adding. I just have an effects track or a syn track with Echo Boy. And the key to this one is we're going to use a dual echo. So you could use any kind of stereo echo. You could use H delay, Echo Boy, repeater. Most DAWs have like a stock stereo delay. But you want to make sure that your left time and your right time are different. So for the left side, I have a quarter note delay, and on the right side, I have an eighth note delay. And I have this feedback pretty high, and I have a low cut right around noon and a high cut right around in between 9 and 10 o'clock. And I have the Echoplex style, which is just going to give you a little bit of chorus. It's going to kind of naturally filter out. It gives you a really cool delay. And then I have it super wide. There's all my settings if you want to copy them. This thing does magic. Let me show you what this sounds like. So once we pop the vocal in,
You didn't want this, and I didn't need it.
you could always sidechain that to the vocal if you wanted to. I noticed that on a lot of this album, there's tons of use of like delays and reverbs that are super wet and not very sidechained. So I'm going to leave it like this. Here's what it sounds like in the mix.
You didn't want this, and I didn't need it. If it's too late for honesty, I guess I'll keep it a secret.
That's really all there is to that. So it's tune it really hard in Autotune, saturate it and compress it a lot more than you normally would, add a little bit of EQ, and then you want that stereo delay where there's an eighth note on one side and a quarter note on one side, and the feedback on the quarter note side is much larger. So that eighth note side only repeats once or twice. That quarter note side is probably going 4 or 5, maybe even 6 times. So just try to dial that in. You could use any kind of stereo delay that you want. The last little effect that we're going to talk about is this kind of monster granular effect that we have from Blue. And this just happens in the transition of the song. So here's what this one sounds like with the kind of natural effect. This is nothing happening creatively. This is just that effect we started with.
I can't wait forever and a day for you.
So the first thing that we want to do is add Autotune. We can speed this up a little bit. And the main thing is the Formant is actually going to go to about 118, 120. So the last time we took it to the left to about 80. That gave us that really kind of heightened nasally sound. We're going to bring it down now, and that'll kind of give you a little bit more chest voice.
I can't wait forever and a day for you to figure out what you want to say.
So that'll work for now. We're also going to saturate this quite a bit. Drive at about 9, low cut at about 9 o'clock, tone at about in between 9 and 10 o'clock, no high cut. Output is right over here. This is really similar to that kind of Chihiro granular or that L'Amour granular effect that we had.
I can't wait forever and a day for...
The next thing that we're doing is adding repeater just to do a little bit of a slap delay. So we have a 30-second note on the left and a 30-second dotted on the right. We have this mix at like maybe 10%, nothing crazy at all. And then we just have a little bit of filtering happening. This is on the Tape Delay Classic. Here are the settings if you want to copy it.
I can't wait forever and a day for you to figure out what you want to say.
It's just giving us a little bit of a stereo slap back. The next thing that we're doing is adding a really, really small kind of room or plate with Verb Suite. So this is just the 0.5 second plate. We have it about 600 milliseconds. I did a little bit of EQ, a little bit of chorus and pre-delay, and the wet is about 25%.
I can't wait forever and a day for you to figure out what you want to say.
The next thing that we have is just a little bit of EQ. So we are doing like a 12 dB per octave cut at 130. We are doing a 12 dB per octave cut at about 11,300. And then taking out some high mids, taking out some boxy mids. And here's what you have.
I can't wait forever and a day for...
Here's what it sounds like in the mix.
I can't wait forever and a day for you to figure out what you want to say.
And there are 5 of my favorite vocal effects from the Billie Eilish album with a couple little freebies thrown in. You kind of got to see also how to just mix a super soft, delicate, warm vocal. And you even got to see some stuff like the, Birds of a Feather vocal chain and the L'Amour kind of reverb tuck. So hopefully this video helped you out. I thought that there were so many cool vocal production things happening on this album. I thought about doing a how to make a Billie Eilish song video, but I feel like so many songs on the album are completely different. I wasn't really sure how to dial that in into one concise video. So what I did for this is just made a quick little demo track just to use for the vocals, and hopefully that gave you a big sense of what Billie and Finneas are doing on Hit Me Hard and Soft. So if you enjoyed this video, please make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. That does help out our channel a ton. Let us know in the comments what videos you might want to see in the future, because those are really where we pull our ideas and inspiration from. And then other than that, if you want to support us, head over to makepopmusic.com. We have free samples, presets, we have paid packs, we have MIDI packs, we have start to finish production courses that show you stuff like this in much, much, much more detail. So if you want to check that out, that's makepopmusic.com. Other than that, I'll see you next week with another tutorial. I'll see you guys very, very soon. Much love. Peace.